Welcome to the enchanting world of the Never Cross a Witch Bitch podcast. Prepare to be captivated as we embark on a thrilling journey into the realm of spirituality with our remarkable team of a distinctive energy mixture. Leading the way is Mitch Garlington, a gifted gay male witch, touring stage medium, and psychic tarot card reader. With a background in the competitive corporate world and experience as a Cher impersonator, Mitch brings a fresh and unique perspective to our discussions. Next, we have Lucy Locke, a former fundamentalist Christian missionary turned sex shop manager turned professional dog groomer turned psychic medium, trance channeler, and tarot card reader. Her incredible transformation into the spiritual world is truly inspiring. And last but certainly not least, we have Carly Batten, a second-generation practicing pagan, intuitive oracle card reader, and spiritual mother to many. Carly brings a grounded approach and simple understanding to the complexities of spiritual living. Together, we form an unstoppable podcast as we delve into all things spiritual and the journey of life. Our mission is crystal clear: to spread the message that spirit embraces all and that each of us is on a spiritual path, whether we realize it or not. So buckle up and get ready for an exhilarating adventure with the Never Cross a Witch Bitch podcast. Please note that all ideas discussed and presented in this podcast are the personal opinions of the individual podcasters and do not necessarily reflect the views of each other or the viewers. Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you to a Never Cross a Witch Bitch, our first podcast ever. And this is Lucy Locke speaking right now, and I want to introduce to you Carly Batten and Mitch Garlington. If you guys would like to say hello.
Hello. We all sound very
So you'll have to bear with us. I know we're going to have to bear with us. This is our first time doing this, so it's going to be rusty. But we will get slicker and smoother as we go along. I promise you. And I promise you.
Are you sure about that? I don't think we will get slicker and smoother. I think it's always going to be the way we are.
If you've ever seen me walk in a room, I'm slick and I'm smooth. Totally the opposite. Anyway, we thought today we were discussing. We're going to talk on the topic of tarot, give a little bit about our backgrounds, and a little bit about our walks and in the spiritual life, and then we were going to discuss tarot. So are you guys up for that?
Yeah, sounds
I'm
good.
Up for that.
Good to me.
Excellent. Well, I thought we could start with Mitch because I think everyone's here to see you anyway. No, I'm joking.
Not at all. I love the way she just
we're insignificant on this.
I'm going to throw Mitch under the bus. Let's start with you, big guy, and then we'll go on to Carly, and then I'll end it, and we can then get on to the topic. How does that sound?
Sounds good. So for
Mitchell,
those
you only have 4 minutes.
Oh, okay. So for those that kind of don't know me, so I'm a spiritual medium, tarot reader, and actually it's interesting we're talking about tarot because I've done other videos around this, and actually I really feel like tarot sort of came into a stage of my life where it really kind of saved me, to be honest, because when I first learned how to do tarot, it was never to do for the public or any of this stuff. It was always about self, actually, and I was in a really dark space. There was a lot of stuff happening in my personal world that was just a little bit of a mess, and I have mentioned this in other podcasts before. So some of the best people used to kind of come into my life when I used to work in a bed shop, and it was really weird, but all these spiritual people would just appear, and it was a bit strange. And one of those people, or amazing ladies, who you guys both know actually, is Annette Gearing, and she kind of came into the bed shop one day with her husband looking at beds, and she just literally sat down on this bed that was called Enchanted, and her actual sideline business is Enchanted Tarot, and it all kind of stemmed from that point, really. And we got chatting and everything else, and she sort of said about how she was doing this tarot course, would I be interested? And I was like, yeah, sounds good. Sounds really interesting. So, and she's sort of saying how she used tarot a lot for mindfulness and everything like that. So that's how it kind of started for me. It was all about self. And what was lovely is to sort of actually see the cards telling a pictation or telling a story of what was happening at that point in your life. And for me, it was mega important for my own personal mental health. And as the journey evolved, I ended up doing it for sort of, friends and family. And then it kind of snowballed. And all of a sudden, here I am today as this professional reader. But that was never my aim at all. And it seems to be that way for people. I've spoken to quite a few others about how tarot's come into their life, and it's almost always been quite unexpected yet very powerful. But I do really feel it got me out of a dark period of depression. I was quite suicidal at one point in time, and it just kind of gave me realization and gave me purpose. And the spiritual side of things, I've always been aware of spirit, but I blocked it for quite a long time. And I think when the tarot kind of key was unlocked, very shortly after, they used that to sort of unlock the spirit kind of key, the mediumistic key, and it all kind of came together. And the rest is sort of history, as they say. So that's pretty much my journey in a nutshell. So I don't know if that. Yeah, it is. But I really feel
well,
what
this
I
is
love.
a good time you could plug your book.
Oh, my book. Which one? I've got a few.
Your autobiography.
Well, yeah, The Stranger in This World, actually. Let me go and grab a copy so I can have it up. One sec. Hang on. I have it close by. So, yeah.
There's one I made earlier.
Here's one I made earlier. So, yeah, Stranger in This World. Oh, my portal's going to zoom in on this now, look. So this is a story of I don't know if I'd call it a biography, but it's a story of my life up until a point in time. So it's really like my past. Actually, a lot of this book is about the Muggle journey and how spirit were always with me in the background, and how it's all kind of blended and came together. And it does talk about the tarot journey in there as well. There's also lots in here about understanding my sexuality, coming out as a gay man and a gay witch and all of that. So there's loads in here. But yeah, so that's probably like a whole topic for another day. But yeah, that is available on Amazon if anyone's interested, or at any of the events. Just a cheeky little
shameless
plug.
Shameless plug. Love the plug.
So I suppose that's me in a nutshell, really. And yeah, what I love about tarot is when you see that light bulb moment when, it clicks with somebody and it leaves them feeling empowered and it leaves them feeling better than when, you first found them. Because some people come to your table and it's almost like they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders. And sometimes it is real, but sometimes it's just where life has got too much. And sometimes by negotiating that sort of tarot journey with somebody, they see this roadmap of life in a completely different way, and they do just suddenly feel like life makes sense a bit, which is really cool.
I think it's making awesome. I think it's giving people those bite-sized pieces of information, isn't it, that they can then deal with, rather than like looking at it's like looking at a brick wall, isn't it? Where like you look at a brick wall, it's as an analogy for you. So if you look at a brick wall, it's easier to take the brick wall down piece by piece if you want to preserve the pieces, rather than just smash it with hammer when it just ends up a big rubbly mess, doesn't it, really? So,
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of my journey. So I was going to say, like, it's interesting as well because both of you have kind of come into my life via tarot, almost in a way. Like with yourself, Lucy, obviously, like I met you at some really dodgy little fair.
Yeah, it was like seedy. It was totally seedy, wasn't it?
But it's interesting how
what farm are you at?
It's kind of interesting how we all kind of interlinked though through, because obviously, the fair was great and it was run by Carly. And it was a beautiful fair, and I wasn't even meant to have space, and then somebody dropped out, and then sort of Lucy just took that space, did your reading, and yeah, the connection just kind of grew from there, really, didn't it?
Yeah, super cool. Yeah, that is. Let's go into Carly, and then we'll come on to my little bit.
Oh, you don't want to come on
pretty
to
much
me?
On the same day. I did.
Yeah, I mean, we've all interlinked really well together, haven't we? So that's cool. But my journey is I do oracle cards rather than tarot cards, but that's not my main thing. So that's my main thing is the paganism and the witch side of things. I don't shout out about it enough. I've got braver at saying about it. I've been on my path as you go through life, you then realize why things didn't quite fit as a kid. You know, you realize why you felt a little bit older in your days than, you know, all your other friends, or just things start slotting in as you get older. So, you know, whilst I've sort of been through trials and tribulations and things, I think all our trials and tribulations are different. But that sort of enlightened me into realizing that I wasn't actually different. It was just me. So that's where my paganism and me being a witch has come from. And then from that, I then realized that obviously I've got a connection with reading the cards. So I read them intuitively. I could never quite, tarot used to scare me a little bit. My dad used to read tarot. So Grandad of Bardway used to read tarot. But he only ever used to use the higher arcana. So didn't use the whole spread as you guys now use the whole pack. And we've actually got a set of Bardway tarot cards that somebody drew for my dad. I think Mitch has got a set, actually. I think I chucked a set at Mitch and said, try them out, tell me what you think.
They are really cool. And also because that was how it was done back in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah. In the 70s, that gives away how old I am. The old days. When I was a girl. So yeah, so it's sort of stemmed from there. So I've come from that background. So my dad has always been interested in tarot. So my fascination started when I was probably about 6 years old, and I used to hide behind the sofa and look at the Man, Myth and Magic magazines. Over the days when you used to collect the magazines and like slide them onto the metal doodahs in a big foldery thing, you know, and I used to sit behind there and like look at all the mystical stuff. And you know, in the 70s there was a lot about occult stuff, so there was lots of other stuff going on. Some of it's quite scary, you know, but it didn't seem to really worry me. But I was more intrigued by it than I was worried by it. And I never, not until now, did I realize why I was intrigued by it. And it just feels, that lifestyle feels right to me, you know. So there's sort of the paganism side of things. So I've been quite lucky. I've always been brought up very earthy. And then, as I say, meeting, you know, doing the wands and then meeting Mitch, and then from there it's gone on to where we are now. So it's given me a lot of opportunities in life. Mitch has given me an amazing opportunity to get a bit braver and read the oracle cards and be brave and just trust in what I'm doing, because we all have that, don't we? So yeah, that sort of, as you say, it sort of brings us up to where we are now and what we're doing, and meeting some amazing people like you guys. I mean, if Dad had never made my wands and I hadn't been brave and gone to Mitch's Mitch was one of my first fairs. I think he was probably my second or third fair I went to, selling my dad's wands and beaters. And I look back how far, like, all of us have escalated, and it's just like, yeah, and the amount of people I've met through it, it's just, yeah, it blows your mind. But
it's all that oneness, isn't it? We're all connected to that great web of life, and we're sort of picking into that, really. Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that was only your second fair. I might not have taken you on if I'd have known that. But like,
I told you, I always grin it and wing it. I told you, didn't believe me.
Oh, bless you. So Lucy, tell us about your journey. How did it all start for you?
Yeah, my journey is quite a bit different than your guys's. It involved a lot of, well, I think since I was a child, I was extremely spiritual. But I was raised in an evangelical Christian home in North America, which that should just say that right there. It's a bit different than here, I believe, in the UK. But yeah, so all this stuff that I practice now and all my friends that I have now would have been absolutely considered satanic and demonic and yeah, not good. So yeah, I was even that much into it that I was a missionary for a number of years, and worked with the indigenous in Canada, and then I went over to Fiji for a while and did some missionary work in Fiji, which I failed miserably at. But anyway, that's another story for another time. But yeah, I had some trauma, loads of trauma in my life, and God wasn't cutting it. God in the Christian community wasn't cutting it for me anymore. I felt like I was just constantly having to work to prove myself, to prove that I was good, to prove that I was lovable. Even though they say that's not the way it is, God loves you for who you are. But once you get into the church, it turns into that kind of mentality. And everyone, I felt like, and this is not everyone's experience, this is my personal experience. So take it or leave it. I just felt like it was like a bit competitive all the time of who's more spiritual, who's closer to God, who hears from Jesus, and I was taught from a young age in the Christian community not to trust yourself. You were born in sin. You were born into sin. You were a sinful creature. So from a young age, I lost, and due to trauma in my life too, I lost that navigation, that ability to hear myself, hear my higher self, trust my higher self. That would have been considered no good, to even think you had a higher self or that you had spirit guides. So I went through a number of years of, I left the church when I was 30, and I actually moved to England here when I was 30. And I really feel that that was actually spirit getting me out of that whole community, that whole culture. And when I moved here, I left that all behind, and I left my any ounce of spirituality behind with me, but spirit never left me, if that makes sense. I did my time, and I lived kind of a life free from all that pressure, and still wasn't making good decisions and stuff like that. But yeah, then I had a couple of other traumas that happened to me here in England, and I kind of came to my knees again, but I did not want to go down the Christian route with spirituality, but I knew I needed something for me. And someone recommended getting my tarot cards reads. During this time too, I was going through a lot of deconstructing of they call it deconstructing of the Christian thing, where it's so ingrained in you that you almost have to go through each thought and belief system one by one. And it took years of going through and actually like testing them out inside of me of what felt good, and learning to trust that inner self, learning that I am able to trust myself, that my gut is real, because I didn't trust my gut. That's what caused a lot of trauma in my life. I allowed myself to be attracted and attracted a lot of people that took advantage of me. And my gut was saying no all the time, but I never trusted it. So I did the opposite of it, and it got me into a lot of trouble, and a lot of hurt. Anyway, yeah, so someone said, why don't you get your tarot cards read? And I was just, that was like the ultimate of like, don't go there, but it kept playing on me. It kept playing on me. And so I booked with a lady in my town, my small town. And I went to her, and I was sweating buckets. So I know what it feels like to get your first tarot card read. I was expecting her to tell me the date of my death, all this kind of stuff. I was just like, oh no, please don't, And it was the most wonderful read you can imagine. She picked up on my Christianity right away, my old Christianity, and said, that was one of the first things she said, you've left that behind, and that's good. It's done its purpose, kind of thing in your life. She described, I just met Colin, my partner now of 8 years. She described him to a T, physically what he looked like, and said he was going to be my forever. And I was not going to tell Colin that, but I did end up telling him that when I was blind drunk one night. I don't remember, but he said, I was like, you're my forever, my tarot card reader said. And he was like,
I love you. You're staying with me forever.
Yeah. And he was like, what the hell? We weren't even together at that time.
Brilliant. Oh.
So you had your drunk head on, I love you, stay forever. Oh my God.
But what it showed me, what was so beautiful, it was the messages, that they were so personal. But what I got from it and walked away from it was, spirit loves me and sees me. That's what I got from it. And then I knew I have to learn tarot.
It almost like gave you permission to live, didn't it, really?
Yeah, it saved my life like it saved yours, Mitch, and it like saved yours, Carly. Like it gave me it. I had this burning desire that I've got to have people around me feel that love that I felt in that moment from spirit. And it had nothing to do with anything that I was doing at the time. I was not in a good place. Does that make sense? I was not, I was living the life of sin, as Christians would call it, you know?
Yeah.
And spirit was like, doesn't matter. I see you. And then my life started getting better. The peace I felt, knowing that I was loved for who I was in that moment, the peace I felt actually made me want to be a better person, because I saw how much I was loved. So it was an amazing experience. And yeah, then I started to learn tarot. I started to practice. I was a dog groomer, and I had my own business for a while, and I would like read on some of my clients if they let me for free. Yeah, friends, that kind of thing. And Reiki was also an opening for me. I actually took Reiki before I would got my tarot cards read. And that, I think that was a big, that 2-day course, that it was a 1-day course, and it was amazing. And it was through Pets at Home, believe it or not, sent me on that course to learn to do it on dogs.
Wow.
Yeah. And everyone in the course, not everyone, but there was a few of them that was taken as a complete joke, but it opened something up without me knowing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I hear a lot of people's journeys into the world of spiritual starts with Reiki, that they get the Reiki 1, and then I didn't get my Reiki 2 till like 6 or 7 years later. But yeah, it opened, I believe it opened me up to allow that deconstruction to start happening, allow me to, and the journey. But then, yeah, so I did that for a few years, just learning it by myself, doing it on friends, doing it at people's drunk parties, not being paid. I mean, I would just bring my tarot cards with me, and I'm like, you want your tarots read? And they're like, yeah, sure. You know, they're like all drunk, but I would just give me time to practice, you know, and I could see that there was a gifting there. I could listen to my intuition, which was also part of my personal journey. For me, my personal journey too, sorry, I'm going on a little bit, is I've had to deal with trauma, and dealing with my trauma has actually opened up my spirituality more. That's my personal journey. So looking at my trauma, looking deeply at it, taking the layers off of belief systems that I've gathered in my life about myself, layer by layer, has opened my spirituality up more and more and more, and allowed more truth to come in for me, and has brought my intuition more alive. So the more I go to a counselor once a month. I used to go every week, but I've been going for years, and I find the two go hand in hand for me personally. And that's what a lot of my reads are about. I end up reading for people that have a bit of trauma in their life, and it's like that love comes through, if that makes sense, and spirit showing them that how special they are. And that seems to be the people that are attracted to me for reads, which I love that. But yeah, then I met you guys. I went to Carly's fair with the woman that read my tarots that first time. Believe it or not, we became friends.
Did you?
And
wow.
Yeah, and I saw Mitch, and I was like, oh, I'm drawn to him. And I went over, and he said, it was one of your 2-day fairs, and he said, I don't have room today. And he kind of stared me down a little bit, like I was just like, oh.
Yeah, he's a meanie, isn't he?
I put my name on his list for the next morning, and my friend couldn't come with me, so I brought my partner Colin with me. And he's not very, he's a muggle. He's not very spiritual at all, but he's getting there. He's getting there slowly but surely. He's more of a science guy, as he likes to call himself, which the two intertwine anyway. But
You won't tell him.
He came with me, and what blew his mind was Mitch ended up reading. I think you did say this when we sat down. You were like, "Oh fuck, here we go, a couple that wants." You know,
I was thinking, oh god, it's the worst nightmare. 2 together, what's it going to be here? Because I'm used to just doing 1 at a time, and I always think when there's 2 together, oh, there's an expectation. So here we go. But I rolled with it.
Yeah, he did. We didn't have an expectation. Colin was just sitting there. He didn't expect anything, but he did a read on me and Colin, and he brought through our dog that had passed away a couple of years before, and that blew Colin's mind, because you described our dog to a T, what it looked like, its personality, all that kind of stuff, and that was really special for Colin. He got a bit teary-eyed with that. So yeah, it was amazing. But I went and I bent over to Mitch and I was like, I want to do what you're doing. And I remember you just staring me straight in the eyes. And I was like, I want to be doing what you're doing. And I left it at that.
Move over.
Okay. And all of a sudden, Mitch was open and invited me to a fair. He didn't know me from a hole in the ground, and he opened up doors. And then, Carly, you opened up doors. You invited me to your fair. And it's just growing since this. And this is less than a year ago, you guys.
And what did your tarot
say?
Now?
A year ago now.
Say, everything with your tarot as well, it was saying, when you were saying to me, like, oh, I want to do this, that, and the other. And it was all showing me that you had like the star, if I remember. There's all the good cards. Yeah. And it was like, and I was almost thinking, like, just get on with it. Just, make it happen. Create. It's almost like give yourself permission for that experience to become. Because I think sometimes, like you said, where we've had so much trauma, and I think a lot of people that are spiritual have stemmed from trauma, it's almost like that's the one thing we deny ourselves access to just have. And when we do give ourselves that, that's where the magic happens almost, isn't it, really?
I think the one thing we must, when people, I've come across a lot of people in the spiritual path, and I tell you, it's one thing that's always made me have a little think, and it sometimes makes me doubt. It sounds really weird, but when you think, have I had enough trauma to be doing what I'm doing? Do you get what I'm saying?
Trauma's personal to each one of us. Yeah, but
exactly.
Trauma's personal to each one of us.
Yeah. So if there's anyone listening to this and says, well, I've never had maybe what you've been up against, Lucy, or what Mitch has been up against, my trauma in my life hasn't been anything like yours and Mitch's. It's all different, but it's what happened in your world. So there might be tiny little things like you got niggled at school and bullied and things like that, all through life, or you've lost someone. That's a trauma. Losing someone who's really dear to your heart, it is a trauma. It just is how the terminology is used. So if anyone listening to the podcast ever doubts the fact that they feel like I always say grinning and winging it, don't ever feel that you're not worthy of traveling your path that you are just because you haven't had some trauma in your life or some dramatic trauma. Some people go through and don't have heavy trauma and don't have that stuff to unpeel, and that we're trying to I hate terminology, it drives me mad, so that what you've done, Lucy, and peeled it off. A lot of people will kill that shadow work, which is what it is. It's peeling off all those layers and getting in there. So I think we've all had those different, and I just wanted to sort of say, sorry jumping in, but I just sort of wanted to say that it doesn't matter what you've had in your life. You could have a very happy life and still walk that spiritual path. And don't ever doubt that you shouldn't be doing that, because you're there for a reason. The universe and spirit, whoever you perceive that spirit to be, has put you there for a reason to be doing what you're doing. You might take the scenic route round, which most of us tend to do. Like, Mitch said, he, denied it for a long time. And a lot of us go, oh, don't be so silly, So we might take the scenic route, but we just get there in the end, don't we?
100%. And I'll tell you something about trauma. Trauma is not what happened to you. It's actually how it's affected the body. So everyone has trauma. Does that make sense? So
yeah.
Not particularly how bad something happened to you. It creates whatever is negative towards you, creates the same chemicals in all of us. It just might be different outside negativities that have created the trauma. So some people might say, oh, I was abused when I was younger. I had this happen when I was younger. I had that. And then some people would be like, maybe I broke my leg. It still affects the body the same.
Does
that make sense?
Still,
so the same chemicals
absolutely
have passed through your body. It's just a different outside circumstance, if that makes sense.
That's a good way. That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
So no one's trauma is like, does that make sense? Well, it took me years, because for me, I didn't speak about trauma because I thought, oh, I don't want to. It felt like I was like trying to get attention or get people pitying me, and I wanted the opposite. Does that make sense? I didn't want to be defined by my trauma. I didn't want to be defined. But it wasn't until a few years ago they started to realize it actually affects and more psychologists are getting this, it's how it affects the body. So you can talk your way out of the trauma. So you can go to talk therapy, but the trauma is still sitting in your body and can be triggered by things that might not even be related to that trauma, but it brings that same effect, if that makes sense. So that's my big thing with tarot card reading is I like people to face their shadow a bit, because that's what holds us back. I think we're born into this world quite pure. Does that make sense in a lot of ways, like the soul and everything like that? And then it's
we're very undiluted.
Yeah, and then crap society and everything gets on us. And
it's the conditioning, it's everything taking place, isn't it, from school and all the rest of it. You're heavily conditioned at that point in time, you know. And well, I was going to say parents, but like, it's not even parents, it's sometimes just the rules and regulations one's needing to live by that can be quite suppressive at times, you know.
But to me, tarot is like perfect. It reads into things so well, if that makes sense. The cards are so beautiful, and the energy of the cards are so beautiful that it reads. It can talk on. It's so deep. It's impossible to get to the depths of it. I think with tarot, you can learn the basic energies of each card, but if you do it intuitively, like I think the three of us do with Oracle and tarot, it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And a lot of times, depending on who's sitting in front of you, the energies change of the cards with whoever you're reading for.
Yeah. Do you find that sometimes you have I know I've done this with the Oracle cards, but you pull out a card and that card for one person meant something else, and then someone else is sat in front of you. I mean, something completely different. But it'd be exactly the same card, but you'll notice something else in the picture. Like you might have noticed a flower with the other person, but you notice a squiggle on a rock with the other. And it just completely get what you mean about it all changing. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. It blows me away.
It's like a mirror to the soul, isn't it? Depending on that person's energy that you're reading. Yeah, because it's like we could all have the same card of, I don't know, the Hangman now, and we'd all read it completely differently, wouldn't we? But the overall theme would still be there, but the pictations that we take would be slightly different, you know? So it is interesting, definitely. Have you ever had a situation where there's someone you've not been able to read for at all?
Yes,
I have. Yeah, I've been able to read for them, but I can feel their
resistance to it, maybe.
Resistance to it, if that makes sense. And you have to just kind of trust. We had that. I'm not going to go into personally because I don't want the people might be listening, but we had that with a mediumship thing where I went to a mediumship class of Mitch's, and I got something about this particular woman and someone that had passed, and you got the same feeling, and she absolutely denied it. Like, but it wouldn't leave me. It would not leave me. I just knew she was not ready to face it. Does that make sense? And I've had that where things have come through for me, and it's so strong in my gut, but it's the person's just not there yet. And that's and it's letting that go and going, okay, they're not there yet, and I'm not gonna, that's between them and spirit, if that makes sense. But spirit might use us to nudge, be a chain in the link to nudge them to start facing
just to start listening. And then it's up to the person who's sitting with you to then open up to that if they want to. If but you've planted the seed, haven't you? Create that ripple effect. I always go on about the ripple effect to create that thought pattern, whichever way you want to look at it.
Exactly.
But it's hard.
Spirit's
isn't it,
not out to shame or scare. Spirit's out to release and heal and love. Like, that is what it's all about. So like when something comes up that may feel like, oh, I don't want to, the person that's getting a read doesn't want to face that. And you've probably had that, Mitch, a million times with bringing through mediumship of the person going, I don't want to hear from that person. And it's about healing. It's about healing, it really is. It's about freeing that person so that they're free to let go of whatever belief systems, hurts, anger, because it does nothing to anyone else. It's the pain that you're holding, that person's holding, is actually hurting them, and spirit wants them not to be hurting.
And also, I think for spirit, for their next piece of ascension, it's not, I think, even just about the person we're reading for. It's sometimes that acknowledgement so that spirit can move on in their time or in their space or dimension for their ongoing healing of what they have to go through as well, you know. So I feel it's very much not just the stuff happening on earth, it's their ascension as well. And I think people forget that sometimes, you know. And you know, by having the acknowledgement, it doesn't take away what happened, but like you say, it's giving you permission to almost set yourself free, and so both parties can sort of find a way to move on, I guess, really, you know. But it is interesting when people sometimes don't want to acknowledge that, or they slam the brake on it, and it's like, oh, okay. But in terms of like the tarot, I always think, you know, if people are sometimes disagreeing or not liking what's coming out, I just think tarot doesn't have an agenda. It doesn't have a reason to lie, you know. It's just the energy of what it's holding. So take it or don't, but you know, that is the energy, and what you choose to do with it is your free will. It's your journey, I guess, as and when you're ready to own it for what you need.
Totally
it's very
agree.
difficult as it's very difficult though as a reader. I know that we've all spoken about this all together because we were in the same place at the same time, but it's very difficult as a reader, and I know there'll be people out there listening to the podcast that are sort of, you know, just coming out on the, let's say, reader circuit, and I use that close open quote, doos, that will have someone sat in front of them, and then you start halfway through doubting your ability, or doubting you know, you're reading for someone, and then someone sat in front of you going, no, and then you get that twitch of like, you know, am I, can I do this? Oh God, or am I grinning and winging it? And I've gone through this. You guys know I've gone through this, and I know that you've both personally gone through this. Just keep true to it is the key to it, isn't it, really? And just know that what you've said, and it's really funny, I had a real light bulb moment, because normally I would have come away from a reading and gone, oh God, I can't do this. It's not for me. And I would have sat in a corner and melted in a heap. But I didn't, because I just completely and utterly 100% trust what I was said. And I was just like, well, this is what is here. I can't change it, and I'm not going to. So you're just going to have to take the information and sit it on the burner and think about it. But it's really hard as a reader. Me as a reader, I found that really hard the first time it's happened. It makes you really doubt your abilities. I know.
I think yeah, I was going to say, I think what I feel with that as well. Someone like a really good medium said to me one time when I had a similar doubting of my ability, and they said, your guide wants to work with you. They would never tell you false information. Spirit don't want to set anybody up to fail. And like with Lucy says, it's all about love, empowerment. So I think when we get things, even if we're doubting it or we're not sure, it's remembering, well, they wouldn't give us that for no reason, you know, and they may not want to own it in those moments. And sometimes it takes days, weeks, even months. And I've had it before where people have been quite adamant, no, that doesn't make sense. And then they've messaged me a few weeks later saying, oh my God, everything's come to fruition. You know, and I'm so sorry that I was quite tricky to negotiate at the time. And I think also it's not us needing to know, we're just the voice box, aren't we, essentially? You know, it's almost about needing to even know, you know.
Sometimes it's words that you say that don't even make sense to you, or like it's even just in passing. I've had it a few times, and that's one thing I do. I open up myself to spirit and just say, speak through me the way that you speak through me. And I've said certain things where they're like, oh my God, that's what my husband said to me, or, you know, that kind of thing. And it's like, means nothing to me, you know, but spirit in that moment says the smallest thing through you that
resonates,
blows their mind.
Yeah.
So it's just being open to spirit. But yeah, there are people that, or they, like we said, expectations, client expectations. It's a tricky one, because
it's a big old one. Yeah, that is a big old one.
They want to hear things the exact way that they have it in their mind to hear it. And or they've watched TV and they've seen like mediums work, and you go, well, you don't even know if that's real. Does that make sense? Like TV is like, they think like, I want it a certain way, and if it doesn't get done that certain way, then it's like not real. And it, you know, spirit does hear that, but at the same time, it's vast, and it's maybe, Mitch, you're better at describing this than I am.
Well,
but
I just feel as you're sort of talking about that, it's like what I do see quite a bit is sometimes people, where they're so focused on wanting that one thing, they've robbed themselves of the beauty of what the reading actually was. You know, I remember a couple of months ago, there was a lady, she was a lovely lady. I read for her, had her mum come through, so much amazing evidence and everything else. It was backed up with the tarot. But because I couldn't get her nickname, everything else that had been channeled, it's almost like she dismissed it. And it's like, spirit aren't giving me the nickname for whatever reason, but look at all this cool evidence and validation that they've brought through. And she just wouldn't allow herself to think or to receive it because she was holding out for this nickname. And I thought that was quite sad, really, because she'd literally robbed herself of what was really quite a good reading, you know?
I've never thought of it that way, and that has just resonated in my body, Mitch, of it's, you didn't take that pressure on. She's actually losing out. The client is losing out by their their narrow-minded thinking on things, and it's robbing themselves. It has nothing to do with us. Because at the end of the day, we just walk away from it and let spirit, that's part of the journey, is releasing that to spirit, because we can't carry everyone's reads with us. It's like a counselor. They can't carry everyone's stuff with them. They have to release it. And
it's like when people, like, I might bump into somebody in a supermarket or something, and they say, "Oh, you did me this amazing reading, whoever came through." I'm like, "I've been asleep since then. I can't bloody remember." I'm like, as soon as it's like,
slept and ate pizza since then.
Yeah, as soon as a reading is done, I shed it pretty fast, unless it's something like really, like really mind-blowing or something that sits with me for a while. But otherwise, I forget it as quick as it's come in. And I don't even remember half the time reading for people. I'm awful. I'm really bad with sort of people and faces. I forget people so quick. And it's not in a rude way, but I think it's healthy, because if we took everything on, like Lucy's saying, it would make us ill,
Yeah, it would do. Have you ever seen the wonderful thing on social media, the cartoon of the chap who's walking around, and he's like, it's black and white cartoon, and he's literally then meets somebody who's struggling, and there's a little bit black that transfers to him, and he goes along meeting people and picking up. Yeah, I mean, he gets to the end and gives his dog a cuddle, which is lovely, because we all like dogs, so we all have a little cuddle at the end. But it's the same thing, isn't it? You walk around and you pick up other people's crap, and you have to learn to let it go. I think
talking about, I think managing expectations, that is a fine line between helping and wanting the best for somebody, but handing it back and saying, I've only showed you a mirror of what's available in your energy. You have to walk it now. I can't physically do it for you. Because I think there are, we've probably all had those crazies that have sort of latched on a little bit deeper than we sometimes would like, and maybe crazy is the wrong word. I think it's just where they've almost been inspired. They sort of feel like they want a piece of us, but again, it's come from spirit. It's not us. Yes, with a voice, but it's not personally us, and I think sometimes people they run the risk of hooking in or latching on, and it's like, hang on a sec, I don't want to become your bestie. If that happens naturally, that's amazing, but when it's forced, it's like, back up. Do you know what I mean? I didn't know you guys
that's 100%. That's the bound. So when you go to a counselor or a psychologist, right, there's natural boundaries there. That person's not going to be your friend. That they're that when you leave the office, that's done. You can't just call them up at home or text them at home. You have to call during office hours and make an appointment to talk to them about anything that's come up. And with tarot reading, I look at a lot like counseling. We're not counselors, so I'm not crossing a boundary there. We're not counselors, but the boundaries with tarot get really messy sometimes. So when you're given a tarot read, a lot of energy can come through of love and healing and forgiveness and all these things that this person's soul has been aching for. Does that make sense? But it's coming from spirit, and they get mixed up in their psyche, where they transfer that onto you, that you feel that way about them, that you are getting those words, and they're not realizing, no, that's actually spirit coming through me, speaking to you. Like you said, Mitch, when I leave a reading, I can't remember 1/5 of what I've said to the person. Well, you know, it's just it just that spirit too. It works, and we'll talk about that probably another time. Trance, mediumship, all that kind of stuff. When you step aside and spirit speaks, the memory doesn't usually cling on to things very much
Yeah.
unless it's really potent. That has something that triggered something maybe in you, you know, yourself. But yeah, I've had it where people are like, "Oh, that reading was amazing," and then they start texting me at nighttime and they're wanting to be friends and wanting to know more about the feelings that they have, and it's like it's hard to put up that boundary, but it needs to be put up that this was a read, and if you want to meet me again, we can set up an appointment. But then it turns into them kind of wanting personal stuff that's turning into a read. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
This is what I love with
It's
Facebook.
very blurry.
There's this lovely thing on Facebook called the block button, and if it gets too much, it's like, right, block off you go. And it's not to be harsh or nasty, but I think sometimes you have to, because, you know, otherwise people do, they leech into you, and they sort of want more than you can give, and it's not fair on us, really.
Have you ever had it, you guys, where you thought this person needs professional counseling rather than a tarot read?
Yeah, and I've actually said that to people before. I've had to refuse people and say, you know, I can't give you any more what you're needing. This has gone beyond the realms of what I can physically offer you. It needs to be more professionally based now.
I have on the stall. I mean, I've just not on a reading, because I've obviously worked more with the Bardware stall, which you end up helping people exactly the same way as you guys are talking, exactly the same way. You have the same thing. You pick up on people's energy. I mean, obviously, you know, there's etiquette, so you don't go and read people willy-nilly. But if you're kicked enough, you know, I've been kicked enough on the stall by spirit to turn around and go, you've got to tell this person this, you've got to do. So then you sort of say, I need to say something. And you open to that, and they go, well, yeah, you know, that's fine. So really weird places like, you know, in the market, in the village hall, you know, you suddenly stood there talking to this person and the whole room disappears, you know, one of those moments. But yeah, there's been times when I've had people come to the store, and they've been, you know, regular visitors, and I've then stood there and gone, I think you need, you know, I think I can give you these, but I think you need to go and have professional help. Or I've actually stopped them from buying stuff because they feel they have to have like everything, you know, so they've connected with me through that. So I've actually stopped people from buying stuff and going, oh, well, you don't really need that, you know. And that's talking from a, you know, because even though I don't work fully reading cards, I still work from my heart. I still work from me with the stall, and I do find, like you guys probably find, you have people that come to you in very vulnerable situations. They are very vulnerable, and you then have to be very careful of how you word things. And when you're talking to someone and you suddenly realize they're hanging on every single word you say, and spirit channels through me when I'm stood behind the stall, I find myself talking about things going, where the chuff did that just come from, you know? And you then suddenly become really aware that this person is hanging on everything you say, and you think, bloody hell, you know,
It's a lot of responsibility, isn't it?
It's a hell of a lot of responsibility. But you have to then take responsibility and say, I think you need to, or I think you've had enough of this. You don't need any more blah, 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 blah. You don't need to come and see me all the time. You know, I mean, I've had people that have connected with the old shoelaces, you know, the old cutting cords. I've had people that have connected with cords, and they've been really down, and I've allowed them to do that. But then I've also been very aware when enough's enough, and I've cut the cord. So I still care for them, but that umbilical cord link I've cut and gone, that's enough. And they've gone off on their own now. They don't make the connection as much as they did. They're not as in need of support. As needy is the wrong word, but in need of support. So yeah, completely understand exactly what you guys are saying about sort of how people link on to the spirit energy connection, but they think it's you. Completely understand that. And then, you know, the expectations of what you can give them, but it's not coming from you, it's coming from everyone around you, spirit around you, the universe, however you perceive that to be. But it's quite daunting, isn't it? It's quite a daunting thought pattern, isn't it? And like you say, you need business hours. Counselors, psychologists have business hours, and it should be the same. It should be really the same for oracle card readers, tarot readers, Reiki therapists, healers, anybody in that concept who's dealing with people that need some help and support sometimes. And also it's an adrenaline rush, isn't it? If you think that feel good feeling that you give when you give a reading, there's a feel good feeling there, isn't there? And some people run for that adrenaline rush, where most people would like ride a motocross bike or something, or go for a run. It's the same sort of addictive concept, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like sometimes you'll see at like sort of psychic fairs and that you'll do what you feel is like quite a great reading for somebody, and then you'll see somebody having the same or another reading, or maybe another 5 readings in the same day, and it's like, huh? And and obviously it's not for us to say what they should or shouldn't be having, but it's kind of like, I find it frustrating because it almost makes me feel almost a little bit like they're devaluing spirit by kind of chasing what's probably going to be the same message with all these readers,
I agree. I think it's like almost not understanding where it's coming from,
or like you say,
that
getting that
buzz
spirit and just needing that constant buzz or that constant fix, if you like. Because I saw it a couple of weeks ago. Was it a couple of weeks ago? Whenever it was, there was this lady. She was a lovely lady. I read for her. I thought it was a great reading. She went away feeling empowered. I went and had some lunch. Then she was with another reader. Then later on in the day, she was with somebody else. And I was thinking, oh my God, like how many reads do you actually need, lady? And again, it's not my business to know. It's not for me to intervene. But I don't know. I always feel it's a little bit devaluing of spirit when it goes into that space.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Sorry, go for it, Carly.
I was going to say, sort of, at that point, you need someone to say to her, you need to stop, because she's obviously, bless her, she's obviously looking for something. But she doesn't actually know what she's looking for, but she knows that she loves the reading, she loves the messages she's getting through, and it is a little bit of it sounds really wrong, but you guys will understand what I mean, and I apologize if it causes offense to everybody else, but it is a slight addiction, getting that kick feeling, isn't it? I mean,
I was going to say a dopamine fix, like it's instead of I was going to say instead of it being from spirit, and it's almost like the person's detached, they're not it maybe resonates, but it excites them over resonates. Does that make sense? So they go and they want that hit again of feeling good, and
they're not realizing they need that, which is why they carry on.
The resonating feeling, and like when I sit down with someone, I love fairs because one thing I like about fairs is the energy that's going into things, and plus you do a number of reads in a day, the energy starts to build, if that makes sense, and you get into the flow. At me as a reader, I get into the flow of getting into that trusting with my guides again, and stuff away from the day to day. But I do ask everyone that sits in front of me, when was your last read? I'm very lucky. Most of them are like, I haven't had a read for 8 years. I seem to attract a lot of the ones that haven't had a read for a long time, which is fun. And then I say to them, I recommend not getting a read for another 3 to 6 months. And I said, you if you feel drawn back to me or someone else, but I say, let the energies lie and see what happens in your life in that 3 to 6 months. Because I think things can just get and I think people get addicted to wanting to know what the future holds for them.
Yeah, and I think sometimes
we're responsible. We're responsible for our future. Does that make sense? Like we're the ones that each one of us as an individual is in control of our own future. Tarot only allows the energy showing of where it's going, but you can switch that up.
Well, it's like a road map, isn't it? When you see a map, you've got all these different roads you could go down, and essentially they'll all get you to the same destination, but it's how quick or slow you're choosing to go, isn't it, really?
And see, my tarot readings are more for enlightenment than divination. Sometimes I get divination. Does that make sense? I do these things and I'm like, this card is saying this to me and it's going to happen or whatever. This could happen to you. But for me, it's more enlightenment about the person, about their soul. And if that makes sense. So, and that to me sheds things so that they can make more empowering decisions in their life. But Mitch, you've got that, I think Mitch, you do a bit of both too. But yours too is you've got the gifting of divination where you can see things for people, you know what I'm saying, and see things quite clearly for people.
It will show me the opportunity of what could be available, but it's not fortune telling because again, it's massive free will. Just because it showed me that that's there, if they choose to not get off the sofa, nothing's going to happen, is it? You know, so it's always like you say, whatever a reading is or however a reading is done. It's about essentially feeding back into you have the power, only you can own this or change this experience for right or wrong. Oh, apologies if you can only bang it. Oscar's like banging on his bowl. He's deciding to be a diva, like wanting bum bum bum.
No, I had to lock mine out. They were starting to wander around me like sharks. I'm like out before we started this. I'm like, out.
Well, not to be a party people, guys, but we are nearly on the witching hour, just to let you know.
Yeah.
Are we on the witching hour? Blimey, that's quick.
It goes fast when you're having fun, doesn't it?
Exactly. And what a wonderful, what a wonderful time, you guys. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a lovely
been brilliant.
Time.
Yeah. I nearly went into radio show mode. I nearly said thank you. Why am I saying thank you? But thank you. Thanks for joining us, Luce.
You're welcome anytime. Well, it wasn't as rusty as I thought it was going to be, so I hope everyone enjoyed listening to that. And we'll be back in hopefully a week time.
Yeah, and, I think we're going to do it for a week each time, aren't we? If we can, it's just going to be fun.
Text us, letting know some topics that you'd like us to discuss and cover.
Nothing.
If you're listening,
we'd be up for that.
Absolutely. So if you're listening and you know any three of us, oh dear.
You know all three of us.
You
I say,
person.
Oh God.
If you know one of us, well, you're third lucky. If you know one of us, get in touch via our Facebook pages. You know how to get hold of us and give us some subject matters, troops. That'd be lovely.
Perfect. Oh, I think that's been a really beautiful hour. Well, it was not meant to be
lovely.
An hour, but it has ended up being an hour. I think.
So, want to close us out, Mitch?
Yeah. Until next time.
Take care, guys, and see you all soon.
Bye for now.
Bye, guys. See you soon.